All right, this is your bonus video, how to work with a metronome. A metronome is a great tool, but it can also be really frustrating until you get the hang of it. So this video will help those of you who have not really gotten it or had much experience with working with a metronome. This is kind of your entry point into being able to use that. It's a really valuable tool, and so we need to befriend the metronome. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you my metronome here. I have a complicated one with all the bells and whistles, which I don't necessarily like. The big thing is you want to make sure, if you're just starting, I like to put it in 1/4 time. And that way you're just hearing a consistent beat. The next thing, make sure your metronome is loud enough. So you can hear that that one is pretty loud. Now, if I'm playing and I can't hear it, then I'm going to take an earbud and put it in my right ear and make sure it's cranked up enough through my right ear and have my left ear free to hear the music. So a lot of times it's just not loud enough. So get your metronome nice and loud, put it through the Bluetooth speaker, and find one of those tones that works for you with the sound. So some of the tones are too low and some of them are too high, but it's got to cut through your instrument. All right, so if you go to Google, you can just have a very simple metronome, and it's got a nice piercing tone. And then you can just adjust your BPM from there. Choose what works for you, choose what works for your brain. Okay, this might seem really rudimentary, but I can't tell you how difficult this is for some people. That's just clapping with the metronome. Now, if you have eighth notes, which a lot of us in our fiddle tunes have eighth notes, that means you're also clapping on the and of the beat, right? So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the ands are exactly halfway between the beat tone. Okay, the next step is to use your bow on an open string. And so I'm going to stay at the same speed, and I'm just going to choose any string. I'm going to use short bows, and I'm going to play quarter notes. So right with the metronome. So that's what you would try. Now we're going to test. Can you do subdivisions yet, or is that something that's coming later? So I'm at 64, and I vocalize 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If you can play quarter notes solidly with a metronome, with your bow, and you feel really stable with that, awesome. If eighth notes were difficult, stay with quarter notes for now, okay? And if you can do eighth note subdivisions, great. But most people have a hard time with that and just need to practice on an open string. All right, so here's an example of how you can practice with the metronome if you can only do quarter notes. So look at Arkansas Traveler. We have eighth notes here. I'm going to say my spotlight measure is measure 10. We'll just take one measure just for the sake of this lesson. And I can't subdivide eighth notes yet, but we can still use the metronome. We're going to take an eighth note and let it equal a beat. Okay, so instead of the quarter note getting the beat, we're just going to decide that the eighth note gets a beat. All right, and so I'm going to see where I'm comfortable at. Just a guess that I might be over 100. Okay, so I'm going to go up to 120 and see how this feels. So every time it clicks, I'm going to play a note. Okay, so that was fine, and I can go up from there. So let's say I feel like maybe I could do 180. Okay. Okay, as you heard, I was able to play at 180, but the beat is so fast, it's giving me like a panic attack. Not really, but that's not usually where we feel the pulse in the music. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tempo that we're at. What's going to come out of here is going to sound exactly the same, but we're going to change our pulse back to the quarter note by dividing by 2. So I'm going to go from 180 to 90, since 90 plus 90 is 180. And then I'm going to think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And if that is tricky, then you'll toggle back to 180. There it is. Try it like this. And then go back and try it at 90. Until you can do it. And then just really stabilize that tempo where you're at. Remember, everything needs to be clean and lined up. So if you can make most of the notes but not all, then you really need to slow it down. There's no shame in starting from a pretty slow tempo. And then once you feel it at 90 for a couple days and you feel stable with the eighth notes and going back and forth between the eighth note gets a beat to the quarter note gets a beat, then you can start using 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or slow the gnome, or just simply going up by steps of 4 until you gradually increase the tempo. Just remember, if you're having trouble with this, stay on the quarter note and just commit to playing an open string every day until you've got it with the quarter note, and then you can do scales, and then you can start using these techniques in your piece. So don't discount the metronome portion of the Need for Speed course. Don't discount it. It's really important. But also use your other techniques until you feel like you've really gotten the metronome.